Hey everybody, Conscious of Economics and Urban Farm Project. And it's Bridget Lynn Dolgoff with maybe some insights of the day. I've been doing some work with the Kabbalistic, you can call them ruins or letters or numbers or whatever you want to call them. I took a class, a while back, maybe 2009. And I ended up taking some classes from this rabbi at the synagogue here in Reno. And this particular rabbi had gone, he was pretty young too. He had gone all over the world. And somehow, he was practicing, at the synagogue in Reno. And he had, big rabbi training and training worldwide. And was very proficient and understood the usage and framework of, Kabbalah or the Kabbalistic, letters, symbols, whatever you want to call them. And so I took some meditation classes on using each, symbol and how to use them. And that they were meant to be like a three-dimensional thing. We see them as a two-dimension, maybe even one-dimension, flat, with the symbol. They're meant to see, and what they do is they, you get them three-dimensionally and you move them and you spin them and you bring light onto them. And then, you kind of wait and see what happens, what comes to you as a result. But recently, I've just been working on, time causes friction and how to get our personal friction out of it and how to get our collective friction out of it. And it's been working really good. It's been bringing up a lot of, major honesty and stuff. Things that I've carried for a long time and not, been completely truthful or honest. And I realize because, on some level, we all have an agenda. We have an agenda to keep the peace. I mean, in my case, I think I've made the mistake of being overly nice when I've seen things and know things, because of the benefit to keep people as clients that maybe hopefully they'll work through it instead of just being honest and telling them the truth. Because, I have agenda, I need to make money and I want to keep clients and I want to be nice, I'm not saying not being nice is not a, thing, but I think overly nice in the way that it's used as friction. I mean, definitely the whole being nice thing is like an anchor dragging me. It's like wrapped around my neck and I'm trying to walk. It's like totally closing off my throat chakra, which means that now I have a block between, my heart and divine will. I mean, throat, is the divine will. So aligning my heart with divine will gets clogged off. So, I mean, there's just a lot of aspects. But, this morning I've been really working with the new one, which is seeing the end, basically seeing, knowing, understanding the end in the beginning. Which is kind of interesting because, I have to drive because I have to work today. So I have to be on my way. And I'm sorry I don't have one of those dash holders that I can do video with the dash, and I'm sorry that I don't have, if I put this on my dash while I'm driving, it just goes flying everywhere, and it's just a giant pain in the butt. So I get to look down at you, and I apologize for that. I'm not actually, doing that as a bad energy thing. Anyway, so been thinking a lot about how you get involved with things, especially the same things over and over again, and you think you're going to get another result. And so you know how it's going to end before it even starts. And you still choose to participate in it, right? So that's kind of like, Albert Einstein. You keep doing the same things over and over again and expecting a different result. The definition of insanity. Okay. So seeing the end and the beginning, and mind you, I like to really take information and contemplate it, turn it around, see it three-dimensionally, move it around, check it out, poke at it. Shh, no, hold on, we're going through the dog zone. Shh, no, let's have shh. No, shh. I said no, shh. No, I know, I said I know. So we have to drive through this park, and Jen likes to bark at all the doggies in the car. Okay, and so we're in the dog zone. It's like coming out the vagina. Yeah. Hey, sit down. Let's have quiet. Sit down. Shh. She's like, yeah, that's not going to happen. All right, seeing the end and the beginning, or knowing the end and the beginning. And so we do. We do this, but we pretend like we don't, because maybe somehow this time it's going to be different. And that's an agenda. That's your agenda, right? Hey, I know. Stop. Be nice. And I didn't hurt you. You're just mad. So don't do it. All right. She gets yelps now when I grab her and ask her not to do things, because, she's mad because she wants to do what she wants to do in the car, which is bark at doggies. And mind you, she's wagging her tail, so she doesn't want to hurt the doggies. She's just barking at them. Maybe, kind of a conflict of interest. Hey, I want to meet you and know you, but stay away from my van. Okay, so, there's so many times that I can look back in my life and I can see where I knew and could see how things were going to end in a situation, because, I had situations that were similar to them before, or I was dealing with the same group of family, or say I was dealing with, a lot of my clients, I started out working on their whole families, and then I've had to fire most of their families, and then usually I'm only working on a couple of them left from their whole family. Because, I really believe the family should heal together. They should shift together and change together. Otherwise, it's going to blow them apart. And at some point, the person who's getting a lot of work is going to have to step away from everybody. So, but there's also this component of, craziness and dynamics and lying and deceit and dishonesty and really bad communication in groups and families and the collective, So, it's also why, I kind of stay away from big groups like religions, or, I really look at CrossFit as a cult. I love Steiner's work and biodynamics, but some of them are culty. Some of the people that are involved, and I've had run-ins with that. And I think information should be accessed from all points and thought about it and contemplated and used. You should, explore how this stuff works for you or doesn't work for you. At some point you have to plant different seeds in your garden bed. I'm a garden bed. I'm the soil, right? My body is just like soil. It's a compost. has tons of microbes. I put things in, it's broken down into formats that can be used or not. If I'm in high inflammatory, then my body is composting me, microbes are composting me and degenerating me. So I'm the soil, and I have to plant seeds, like different kinds of seeds. I remember one of my native teachers saying to me once too that, say, like you have a seed pod, and, God is like the flower that grew the flower that turned into the seed pod. And you're the individual seed. And, when that seed pod blows open, you don't really know where you're going to go. You don't really know what you're going to do. You don't know how you're going to alter yourself. I think that's why your past should never determine your future. Your past is not what your future is, and you can change that in the present by, watering your own personal seed and making sure it has a good climate and, what it needs. Doing a good job planting it. So, you got to have different seeds because you have to, it's a 3-dimensional type thing that we're working with. Because we're really going from like a 2D, 2 sides to everything. 2 sides of a coin, 2 sides of a paper dollar, 2 sides of paper, back and front and back. Seesaw, up, down, good, evil. I'm with you, now I'm against you. Evil, good. So I think in order for us to actually conceptualize or have like a deep understanding about things is that we have to move it into a 3D model so that we can look at all the sides of it and how it plays out and the different information. And I mean, I think a lot about kind of like science kind of ideas and math where more information and data can be held based on surface, right? The surface. So say, for example, you have a one plane surface that holds that much amount of data, but then you have like a square. Now you have 4 surfaces, front and back, and that's a huge more amount of information and data, understanding, wisdom, ideas and thoughts, right? So I think you have to take it more up to a 3D model and lift it up. And so as soon as I get to it, I'm going to do this meditation, this Rudolf Steiner meditation that I learned years ago that kind of, helps us to see things in that 3D model. And then whatever we are blank on in that meditation, like we don't really understand how it fits or how it comes together, we'll know where the blank spots are. And then we can go out in the world and contemplate and do research, and we can figure out, like, for example, recently I'd never seen a mullein root. And so, I could have done a meditation and, saw the mullein seed hit the ground. And I could have saw it start to grow leaves, but I was missing an important part, what was below the surface, the roots. So my meditation and my 3-dimensional work, with understanding that plant, would have not been very good because I didn't even really know what the root system looked like. And so now that I've, dug up mullein root to use in medicine, then it gave me, a bigger picture and a bigger understanding, filling in all of the 3D components of understanding that plant. or working with it in a 3D structure. And you could do it with anything you want. But anyway. Okay, so we're back to that whole philosophy, seeing the end in the beginning. And, I have second-guessed myself so many times, or been talked out of it, or shamed, or, felt guilty, when I could see the end in the beginning, where I was like, I don't want to volunteer my time, which would make me a martyr, and which also will make me a victim, because I know what's going to come. I know what's going to come out of it. And so there's no lesson, there's no lesson in that process of letting the same old, crud muffin stuff happen again and again and again. I mean, I love, I'm, anti-channeling, but a lot of reasons for that. But anyway, I love, Abraham Hicks, or Esther Hicks and the Abraham. And I love what the Abraham says, like, till death do you croak. Because you're going to do the same thing over and over and over and over and over and over and over again until you die, until you croak. And not only that, but it's the same thing that your mother did. It's the same thing your grandmother did. It's the same thing, if you're on the man side, probably the same thing your dad did. Maybe even the same thing your mother did. Over and over and over again. This is why, I think family history is important. I think moving away from ritual or, I even look at like holidays as some kind of family ritualistic behavior. There's that really great story. I probably have said this on the video, but it's worth saying again. There's probably going to be 2 parts to this, because there's a story that I want to get to. The story is about a mom, her daughter, and the son-in-law. And so maybe that'll just be part 2. So there's this crazy story about this granddaughter is making, the family's, famous family, potato dish for the holidays. It's the dish that everyone learns to make in the family, because it has to be carried on, and it's how mom did it, and it's how grandma did it, and it's how great grandma did it, and whoever started it, right? And it becomes this ritualistic pattern of nonsense, doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. So one day, the daughter was cutting the potatoes, and the mother said, "Oh, no, you can't cut the potatoes that way. You have to cut the ends off. All the potatoes have to have the ends cut off. And then you cut them and put them into the tray." The granddaughter's like, "Well, who cares if the ends of the potatoes are on or they're not?" And so the granddaughter says, like, "Well, why is it going to be done this way?" It's like ludicrous. And so it starts a questioning in the family, going up the hierarchy, And they get to somebody who, it was like great grandma, cut the ends off of the potatoes. She's not alive yet, so they have to go to other people in the family to figure out what the hell is going on. And so it turns out to be this long journey of information that was just like, probably important to the person doing it and the people involved, but it's like such just a waste of time. So they find out that the reason why, like, the great grandma cut the ends off the potatoes for this dish that everybody, held solid to, generation after generation, that these ends of these potatoes, have to be cut off because it's a religious thing. It's become like this religious thing in a family. Some kind of, cutting off or not cutting off the ends of the potatoes is like sacrilegious. I mean, it's like so unbelievable what we spend our time in. So it turns out the reason why she cut the ends off of the potatoes was because she didn't have a pan big enough for the potatoes. And so in order to get them sliced right in the dish, she had to cut the ends off the potatoes. I mean, talk about like fiction. I mean, talk about like a major fiction and a story, like of absolute insanity. And just adhering to, this is the way we're going to do it. This is the way we're going to be. Don't ask any questions. And like a total lack of honesty, a total lack of communication. Communication breeds honesty. And, we live in a period where, it's really hard to have a good conversation. It's really good to actually have honesty. And it makes it really difficult to have honesty with self. And I think that, honesty with self has a lot to do with seeing the end. Oh, that guy just ran a red light. Nice. Honesty has a lot to do, especially self-honesty, seeing the end in the beginning. Because you can already see it. You already know how things are going to turn out. You've already been down that road. No need to go down it anymore, but you do. And so I was really thinking a lot about, things that people do, like your child gets autism from a vaccine and it's apparent, right? And then you're in denial that the kid has autism and it's somehow going to grow out of it. And, you keep doing the same things to the kid, feeding him the same kind of food, and don't do anything different. And then you go back in and you have them vaccinated again. It's like, are you kidding me? I had a situation where I really started studying vaccines, especially in animals. And, and it happened with Jen. And we had a situation where they decided to give Jen a whole bunch of vaccinations, even though she had all these vaccinations when she was a puppy. Somebody, even though I got her when she was 6 months old, I actually paid for her because she was in a meth house, but saved her. She's listening to my story. I said, here's the records, she doesn't really need a lot of those other, vaccines. Well, what do they do when I take her in to get her fixed? Well, they decide to give her all those vaccines on top of putting her in a surgery. So when I came to get her, she started having these stroke things where she would just stop and stare. I mean, this is like a year later, she was still having them. She just stop and stare and drool. She was just not in there. And so after that, I was like, you know what? I'm not participating. If I take her to a vet and they want to pressure me for all this, I already know how it's going to turn out. And I'm either going to lose my dog, she's going to die, she's like my best friend. She's not my property. She isn't just something that I have around. I mean, she's my best friend, like my child. And another thing too is like, I don't do anything that's going to harm the public, but I'm not going to comply. So I started doing a whole bunch of, footwork on, animal vaccines and like shocked at how many vaccines kill animals. They just do. And, you want to know why animals are aggressive. Like, there is some inbreeding and stuff like that, but vaccines have tons of mercury in them, animals and people, and it damages the brain. So you over-vaccinate an already, type of breed that has a tendency to be aggressive already, and once it loses its cookies, it goes into total primates, primal state. And, people just can't think this stuff out. And so I don't adhere to that. And I don't do pressure by vets or manipulation or any of that stuff. I go out and work on animals and try to help other people. But the thing is because people are dishonest to themselves and they're dishonest with other people, and there's a total lack of communication with anyone, then they have to keep doing the same thing over and over again, even if it gets them the same result. The suffering, the pain, and then, they find some way to blame others or blame something else because they couldn't make the actual choices necessary, which is to go completely against the grain, to go completely so far out of the box, because, they have to stick together. They have to, have the same mindset. So you have all these people pretending to get along and, toe the party line and not create waves. And, I have to say I'm so glad I didn't have kids, because it would have just been this major battle with society because I wouldn't have vaccinated them. And, I've worked with top immunologists, I know people that are brilliant, that are out of the box, that would never, you go to school to get a PhD in immunology, and what you take from that is never to immunize your children or anybody else. And so you resign your, medical license, or just move into the research sector because, you pretty much are pretty sure that that's not, helpful. But, I would have had land, I would have, grown the food, made the food for them to eat. And then when they were 18, they could go do whatever they wanted. But if they would have had kids, oh, hell no. I would have totally drawn the line. If I'd had a daughter who was going to have a baby in a hospital or whatever else, I would have, set her up to fend off all the stuff that was going to come at her. And then if she was going to vaccinate the child, I would have had to draw a hard line. Because I know exactly what the end is going to be in that beginning. And it's not something that I want to participate in. And if I, allow them to do it to a child or a baby, even though I know what it's going to do, I know what kind of harm, I know that this amazing little beautiful being is going to be turned into from being vaccinated, going to be in a body that's a prison cell for a duration of time. And it's just not something that I would have participated with. I would have had to take a hard line. I probably would have excommunicated her and the baby. Because you know what? If you want to make those decisions and choices, do not drag me into it. I'm not going to energetically participate with it. And I know that sounds super harsh and super mean in our society because, to death do we part. Keep doing the same thing over and over again. And all of this stuff that we participate in, even though we know it's wrong, even though we know what the outcome is going to be, what the end is going to be, we still do it. And we let our energy, we let our power and our life force be used in those directions because we comply, we conform, we keep our trap shut. And we wonder why we get disease and we die young. We wonder why we have chronic problems. And, we have to fight these chronic problems for the rest of our life is because we're allowing ourselves and our energy fields to be used for things that we know in our heart are not good and are not going to lead to good outcomes. Now, it's one thing to allow another person to have their own lesson and experience. But you know what? You don't have to stay in there and, wait it out. Hopefully, 40 years down the road, they're going to get it. You can make a decision now to be like, you know what? I'm not participating in this anymore. And, every decision that you're going to make is probably going to isolate me further and further out of your life. And I'm sorry, but I can't participate in watching you destroy a budding life. I mean, talking about vaccines. Can't be involved with watching you harm and destroy another human being. That's not okay. It's not. It's totally wrong. It's totally wrong. And at some point, you have to, make a decision about that. If they're going to continue to keep doing the same thing, then there's a point where you have to go, you know what? I'm sorry, but I have to shut this door. I don't care if you're a family member, right? You're on your own. You're making your own rules. And I don't have to participate in the murder and harming. One of the biggest principles that I try to work with is do no harm. And so I try to, help people, let them know that they may be harming something or they're doing harm. And then after that, I have to walk away because staying in their life and supporting them is like me also doing harm to whatever they're doing harm to. And you know what? You get that Fibonacci sequence, and you've got somebody in your family, that knows, that vaccines are kind of questionable, but they keep vaccinating their kids over and over again. And, you've got the mom of the daughter complicit. You've got the grandma complicit. You got all the members of the family complicit. Well, let's talk about that Fibonacci sequence, right? So first it starts out with two, the mom and the baby. Then we get to add in the grandma. And then we get to add in the uncles and the aunts and everybody else that are complicit in watching you harm that child and watching the developmental changes in that child that indicate that it's not going well. Something is seriously wrong. And no one's saying a damn thing. And no one putting their foot down. I don't know if you can understand how much energy that is. And how many people are involved in the harm and damage of that baby and that child developing and as it grows. Because they're all involved. They may not be the ones driving that baby down to the doctor to get a vaccine. But by you being complicit, you are killing and involved in killing that life. And this plays out across the board. We have all kinds of people writing books on autism. What is it? 1 in 75 in the U.S. is autistic now? Some kind of spectrum of autism? Well, why? And why haven't we done anything about it to cure it or change it? Why is it something we still are ignoring? Because nobody can tell the truth. Nobody can communicate. Nobody can be honest. Everyone does the same thing over and over again, hoping for something different. And most of all, they can't admit or acknowledge that they see the end in the beginning. They have to pretend like, oh no, maybe it'll be different this time. Well, it's not going to be different. The only way it's different is when you choose it to be different and you don't participate and you don't lend your life essence to, things that do harm and are detrimental and are dishonest. And it's tough. It's tough to be honest. I remember the first time, I used to never say anything to anybody. I ended up going to, I know that's hard to believe, but I decided, to go to Al-Anon, which was for family members of dysfunctional family members, or, married to alcoholic and drug addicts or whatever. You're the ultimate enabler, basically. Anyway, and I was young. I think I was 17 or something like that. And I think I went for about 5 years. And I went for 3 years and never said a word, never said anything about anything. I would go for the 2-hour duration and listen to everybody else. And I found a group that I really, really liked, and it was a lot of women who were, older than me. Women that were older than me. And, they would, talk about the same stuff kind of over and over again, and so that they could stay in the relationships. They didn't have to draw a hard line in the sand, right? And every time a situation would happen, they knew how it was going to end before it started. But it took me 3 years, and one time we were talking about kind of a controversial subject in the group. And I remember that it just provoked me in such a way that I wanted to talk. I wanted to say something. But it also triggered that wall of being trained, as a woman or a child to only speak when you're spoken to, to be quiet, people don't like emotional women or, whatever else it's going to be. There was this trigger. And I literally was gasping while I was trying to talk, trying to get it out, and I couldn't get it out. I couldn't tell these people what I needed to say. I couldn't get it out. And then I remember I started choking. And they were patient. Because, obviously I'd never said not one word, not hi, goodbye, zero. The whole time I've been coming for 3 years. Sat in the corner and listened. And then I started crying hysterically, because there was so much pain that was walled up around telling the truth, communicating, honesty with myself and others, was all kind of crazy. And I ended up, crying hysterically for the whole duration of the meeting, and no one said anything, and everyone just sat there and, waited. And I, spent probably a couple weeks just hysterical. I think it was 20. Anyway. And, I've gone through some really intense healing stuff. When I was around 23, I went through this period where I would just start crying hysterically. I had so much internal pain going on, emotional stuff, that I'd literally lock myself in the bathroom. I remember one time I was on the bathroom floor for 7 hours crying hysterically. So, sometimes the healing journey, that journey to truth and honesty, self-honesty, is not really an easy thing. And I'll leave you with this last story. And then, the next part 2 is going to be the mom, the daughter, the story of the mom, the daughter, and the son-in-law. So Carolyn Meese, I don't know what it was, like late 80s. Well, I started getting bootleg tapes when I was around 23 of, Marianne Williamson. And I had a friend of mine who was like down in LA who was getting these bootleg tapes. And Marianne Williamson was doing A Course in Miracles down there in LA. And, had a pretty big following. I remember one of the stories that she was telling is when, she was in Al-Anon. So there's a lot of things that, with Marianne Williamson, that I could relate to. Because we were probably going through like the same stuff at the same periods of time. She was just better at talking about it, assimilating it, and then, gurging it back up. She was telling this story about, hold on, let me look at the time here. I just have to look. Oh, well, we're going to be good. Anyway, so she was telling this story about, one of the times that she was in Al-Anon, and it was a kind of an all-women's Al-Anon group. And she said, she was going to this Al-Anon group for like 5 years. And they had this one lady who like would hog all the time. And she'd always tell the same story for 5 years. And in Al-Anon, there's no crosstalk. It's about each individual talking about what they need to talk about during the duration of the time. And that's it. And the support of other people not giving you their input or their, psychological babble. Anyway, so the lady would tell the basic same story every week for 5 years. Yeah, Marianne Williamson said, she would talk about how, her husband was like an attorney. He was a raging alcoholic. And he would leave the house, and she would prepare all day long for his return. Because she knew he would return in the state he's going to return in, but she would have no idea how that return was going to be. Could happen a lot of different ways. The return sometimes had him passed out in his car with lights and everything on in front of the house, with the car on and his foot on the brake, which means he could have ran down the road and killed people unconscious. Sometimes he managed to get the car into the driveway. Sometimes he's rammed the garage door, broke it, which, the neighbors could see, right? The dishonesty here, her trying to hide everything. Because that's what the women in her family did, was hide everything. So she continued to do that and would probably do it until she died. And so he would start drinking around lunchtime. So by the time he would get home every night, we're talking like pretty much 7 days a week. And so she would just prepare all day. She'd have everything set up and ready to go. So that when he got home, she could make the transition from getting the car into the garage safely, hopefully, get the car cleaned up for the next day, get him cleaned up in bed, and if fed, and then, then she could spend the next, till 3 o'clock in the morning cleaning up the mess. So basically he would come home, lots of variations of how the car would end up at the house. Sometimes it'd end up on the lawn, almost coming through the, it had gone through the garage door a few times. He's been passed out in the car. And so, however he would show up. So he'd get home with the car. She'd be waiting for that moment. Boom, shotgun goes off. She runs out the door. Then she, figures out how to sit on him or whatever else to get the car. She gets the garage door open, gets the car into the garage, shuts the garage door open. And then now she's, in the thick of it. She has to drag him out of the car. She has to evaluate the car. Is there like any dents on it? Is there throw up, in it? So she would clean out the whole car, clean clean everything up, maybe clean up all the barf or whatever else, and then drag him into the house. She had set up this room so that she could take off his clothes, get him dressed, clean him up if necessary, pooped or peed his pants or whatever else. And then, then she would drag him off, had ways to, drag him into the bedroom, throw him in bed. And then she would clean up that room and wash all of his clothes, get rid of all the evidence. And then, get him some food, if he kind of woke up, aspirin, water, whatever. And, she would spend till like 3 o'clock in the morning sorting it out. So the neighbors would never know. She wouldn't have to be honest with herself about what a horrible life she's living. She's participating in it. And it becomes her job, So one day, after 5 years, there was one lady in particular, Mary Williamson tells the story, that had it. And it was a black woman, an older black lady. And she said, right at the end of this woman telling another one of these crazy, same stories, maybe, different components, but the same story, night after night after night after night after night. And she hit the table, the black lady did. And then she said to the woman, honey, sometime you gotta leave them where Jesus flung them. And I think that's pretty much it. When you're honest with yourself, you're honest with the world, you're, communicating, you can see the end in the beginning, and you know that you shouldn't participate. You got to leave those people, no matter who they